a way of like releasing stress. And, so we're getting awesome. It's like, I got like a 16-page thing, and I just read.
I'm so glad that
yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty dark. Like, I don't know.
I think I got your trouble.
I would have had email.
Welcome everyone, we're going to get started. Welcome to the Zube Lecture Series. This is an exciting time of year because we start to welcome back our alumni, which is a great opportunity. We're back from spring break, starting things off with our panel of planning alumni, and then next week we have a panel of landscape architecture alumni, so come back for that. And this, in case you don't know, is the Zube Lecture Series hosted by the Department of Landscape Architecture and Regional Planning. We're very grateful for the support of this endowment created by Irv and Margaret Zube. Zube was the chair of our department who created this fund to help us to welcome people from all over the country and all over the world, and sometimes our own backyard and our own alumni, to enrich our discussion about planning and sustainability and landscape. So here to host our conversation with our alumni today are two of our current students, Crash, who's sitting here, and Grace up at the front. Crash and Grace are going to introduce themselves and introduce the panelists, and we'll have a great conversation about what it's like to be a planner. So welcome.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Crash, this is Grace, and we're here on behalf of our planning student organization, that's TSO. And I'm just going to keep it short and say that we would like to extend a big thank you to Professor Dunn and the entire Zube team for helping us. And I also want to extend a big thank you to the LARP admin staff for organizing this and helping us. Now we're going to start the moderated part of our session, and then by the end we're going to open the floor for question and answers. We'll have a Q&A session after that. So, okay, I'm going to hand it off to our panelists, and I would request all of you to introduce yourselves, and then Grace is going to lead the moderated panel. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Camp. I graduated in February of 2023 from the MRP and MS3 programs. I currently work for the South Central Regional Council of Governments in the New Haven, Connecticut area, and I've been here for about 2 years, almost as long as I've been graduated.
Hi everyone, my name is Maureen Pollock. I started the MRP program in 2008, and after taking Jack Ahern's Green Urbanism course, I thought, oh, I like design too, and so I decided to do the dual program. And so I finished my studies in 2012, and I was fortunate enough to get a job for the city of Greenfield, being their associate planner and conservation agent. And I worked there for about 4 years. And then I saw opportunity to work with the town of Amherst. And I worked there for about 5 years. And now I am working for the town of Montague as their planning director. And I've been there for about 2 years now. And it's been an interesting ride.
More to come. Hi everyone, my name is Ben Breger. I graduated in May of 2020, and similar, I guess, to Maureen, but backwards. I came in as an MLA student in 2016 or 17. I was still in the old Hills House. And I went through the MLA program realizing I was actually more drawn to the bigger picture, larger scale like design aspects of landscape architecture, and then that quickly kind of snowballed into wanting to do the MRP program and focusing in on planning and kind of urban planning and I guess like larger scale design projects. When I graduated, I went to work for the town of Amherst and I overlapped with Maureen for a year and a half, which was great. And from there, I went to the State Department of Transportation, working as a transportation planner. And in about 8 months ago, I switched to the private sector, working as a planning consultant for Bowman Consulting. We're out of Westfield, Mass, but it's nationwide. Really doing like transportation planning, but kind of like we try to offer a whole suite of services from transportation to urban planning, working with a lot of public sector clients in the New England area. So that's where I'm at now.
Okay, testing, everybody can hear me good? Okay, thank you. Thank you guys so much for being here. Let's just jump into some questions. So starting off, how was your transition from college to the workforce? What were some successes that you had and maybe some of your biggest challenges during that transition?
Start, I guess. Yeah. So I guess for me, I graduated in during the like crazy pandemic time, early spring 2020. So it was obviously just kind of like a wild time in general. I think going to work in local government, it was an interesting time because it was very much like felt like this like all hands on deck kind of attitude where, I was technically working in the planning staff, but I feel like we were helping out everywhere we could because, there's this public health crisis, helping out with helping with outdoor dining and setting up, I worked at the vaccine clinics for the town of Amherst, so it was kind of this crazy time. But I think it was a really valuable experience, just like getting familiar with like the whole suite of services that like local government can offer and like how, what it looks like when it works well, and how like helpful it can be. But I think, so that was like maybe unique to like the time that I graduated in, but it made for like the transition wise, it was like very much like hit the ground running. That being said, it was also weird, like being mostly fully remote. Like I remember one of my first days was in like February 2020, so like before the pandemic, and I like met everyone in person, and then it was like I didn't see anyone in the office for like many months, so that was kind of interesting. Yeah, I guess that's kind of like what my transition was like. Did anyone else want to?
Yeah, so my transition, thinking back on it. So I remember either I took a class with Scott Jackson in the Natural Resources Department or whatever it's officially called, or it was with him or if he was a guest lecturer, I can't remember, but it was about wetlands. And I took some classes with Timmy Breger, who taught about like watershed planning, and I just remember like, oh wow, this is so fascinating. And I had this new appreciation for thinking about water hydrology and how we are part of watershed. Anyways, so the city of Greenfield had, as I was trying to finish out my master's degree, the city of Greenfield had a part-time conservation agent position. And I was like, oh, well, I love wetlands, and I'm finishing my thesis, let me apply for this. And in my interview with the planning director, he asked, so, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was like, well, I want to be a planner, but I'm willing to do this. And then he was like, oh, well, actually, we are looking for a part-time planner. And he's like, well, I'll have to talk to the HR director, but maybe we can combine both part-time jobs into one full-time job with benefits. And so lesson there was, it doesn't hurt to ask. So that was really great. And so then it turned into me sort of balancing out 2 jobs. And that's, I think, is probably what we're all doing, balancing out projects. That continues to be like a dance. And I really believe that everything in our community, everything's connected. So I really appreciated my time being a conservation agent, of understanding like the science and sort of the design of things and how that's connected to housing or development in general. And so I was happy to pass the baton of being a conservation agent. And so when I worked in Amherst, I was just a town planner. But I thought that was a couple like sort of learning moments. Doesn't hurt to ask. And gaining more experience and more sort of opportunities where it's like, oh, I'm just doing this. But all the things that I learned as a conservation agent helps me now to be a better planner and think about development of all those sorts of permitting and like regulatory conditions.
So my transition, I feel like it was kind of gradual, but eased because I did the 2 programs, MRP and MS3, I had to do an extra semester, so I did 2.5 years. And in my last semester, which I was just mostly finishing up 1 or 2 classes, I had a full-time job with the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, which I was able to get because the prior semester I was an intern with them, and then they were hiring, so it was like a good opportunity when it doesn't hurt to ask. I was supported in applying for it, and they were supportive of me finishing my degree, so I was able to do mostly full-time and then finish up my time here. So then when I graduated, I already had a job and was able to just add on the rest of the full-time hours, and it was pretty seamless because I was working remotely, and that office is located in Cambridge, so I slowly started going into the office there occasionally, but they have a hybrid work week. And then not too long after finishing my degrees here, I did end up working with the COG, which is where I've been the past few years. And it was just kind of good circumstances of someone that I was in my cohort here who didn't do the dual degree, but graduated a little bit sooner than I did, was already working there and knew of the job, and so networking is really important, and staying in contact with people that you meet here and then when you work with professionals through this program. And so from that, I also was able to progress. I didn't mention when we did our intros, but I started as a regional planner at the COG, and I'm now the director of regional planning. And that was another situation where the opportunity opened up while I was there, and I was curious about it, and then I was encouraged to apply, and it worked out. So my transition was a little bit, I guess, easy for me in that way because I already kind of lined up some of those opportunities along the way.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, next question. Have you guys ever done an internship? How's your experience, and do you have any advice to students that might be entering a planning internship this year?
Yeah, I guess I just kind of mentioned that. So I think it was February of 2022, I started my internship with the Lincoln Institute, and that was kind of just one of the situations where over break I was looking for internships, and on LinkedIn it popped up, and it was a scenario planning internship, which isn't something you might see often, and you probably know that there's a scenario planning course that's offered by Kendall Bargers. And I hadn't taken the course at that point, but in Studio, which Dr. Bargers teaches, she incorporates scenario planning into the work that we do. So I kind of had a unique opportunity to have that experience, and then I think that helped me get the internship, which then translated into the job later on. But prior to that, my first summer break, after my first year as an MRP, I did find a planning internship in Connecticut at a different council of governments, not the one I work at. And so that was really interesting to get that perspective from a COG, and it kind of helped me understand like where I think I could end up after I graduated, and was a big reason why I was interested in working for the COG that I do now. And I also wasn't familiar with the COG system, regional planning, outside of what we learned in school until I took that internship, so it was really useful.
Yeah, I had a few internships. One notable, the first one was my first summer here, and I couldn't find an internship that was a paid internship. But the town of Amherst was like, oh, you can intern, but unfortunately, this is our first summer that we're not going to be able to pay the intern. Are you still interested? And I said, sure. So I did that, and it really paid off. Of like years later, they would later hire me they said, oh, when they, when they were hiring for a planner, they saw my name among the other candidates, and they said, oh, we remember working with her. It was, super positive experience, and it got me the interview, and I'm really grateful for that. And it was sort of this leap of faith. I remember in 2008, we were under a recession, and people were encouraging me to take out more money in the loan, getting a student loan, and I took their advice with another leap of faith, being that I just paid off my student loans just a couple months ago. So like 10 years later, it was like such a shocker. And again, I did the dual program, so I owed a lot of money, and so I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, so that first summer I was like, oh wow, am I willing to not have a job, willing to rely on the student loans and do this free volunteer internship. I think at some point I started working at Cushman Market to sort of offset costs, and the student loans did help. And that was the most notable one. Another one I did work at, I interned at PVPC, and I worked under Patty Gamarini, who's a senior planner there, to help. It was super interesting. It was, I helped do research that would then later go into PVPC's green infrastructure plan. And so it was really fascinating. So that my experience working with her was the blend of being a planner and being a landscape architect, and really speaking to how our cities and towns addressing stormwater, and is that reflected are their values reflected in updating their stormwater regulations or in site plan review and zoning bylaw. So it was great. Just even recently, I was looking for advice for we're having we want to build a rain garden in Turner's Falls, and I just was Googling green infrastructure, and I was so proud to see the plan is there, the green infrastructure plan. My name's on it, but that's fine. It's neither here nor there.
Cool. I would say I think my internship I had was the gift that keeps giving. I think I interned for the Franklin Regional Council of Governments in Greenfield, but they do regional planning for Franklin County, and it's kind of a thing, I don't even know if they posted it necessarily. I just sent my resume everywhere and said I'd be happy to intern for, on the cheap. And it was very rewarding internship. I got involved immediately in a lot of different projects, putting together posters, PowerPoints, doing outreach meetings. A lot of times in the summer, that's when there's community engagement and outreach events that are fun to attend. And I say it's the gift that keeps giving, because I feel so often, in the past few years, I've been reconnecting with folks from SCRCOG, whether it was my time at Mascot, I was working on Franklin County transportation project, and I was like, oh, I'm familiar with that already, or oh, I know that person from my internship back in the day. But also, I think maybe most importantly, it's just like having a professional reference for your first job is so important. Someone who can vouch for you that you just like can do a good job, that you're like up to the task, and then the other thing too is also like, you know, when you're leaving one job and going to another, you don't always, or you like can't really get a reference from your existing job. So having that like backlog of people who can vouch for you and give you a reference really helps kind of as you advance in your career. So definitely a strong advocate for internships. The other one I did, I guess it was technically kind of like a part-time job, but I like took notes for the Amherst like Affordable Housing Trust or whatever, and I just like attended their meetings like once or twice a month and took notes. And similar to Maureen, it was just like a way to get, you know, the town familiar with me as a person, and definitely I had some personal connections because I grew up in Amherst, but I knew folks in the town just already from that part-time job. It definitely helped getting a foot in the door for sure.
Awesome, thank you guys. So now shifting over to some typical day-to-day planning questions. What does your typical day-to-day schedule look like? Are there any current projects that are taking priority? And if I might also add, who do you often collaborate with on these projects? Engineers, architects, maybe the community? And yeah, what kind of stands out to you guys there?
Sure, I'm happy to go first. All right, so I'll try to answer all those questions.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Triple question.
Yeah, I would say, so my typical day-to-day in the private sector consulting world, it's very project-based. We try to, there's I don't know, obviously like it's a pressure, not pressure, it's not overwhelming pressure, but you want to like stay billable and keep working on projects that you're getting paid for, obviously. So obviously we have time for like professional development and all that, but in general it's like, just keep on advancing projects along. And so right now, like for example, a big project my company is working on that's really, I think it's a good example of like the power of a consulting firm that combines like engineering and planning, because it's this big, massive, like $127 million project in Somerville, Mass. to reconstruct, if folks are familiar with Somerville McGrath Highway, it's being removed and replaced with this nice, beautiful boulevard. And so it's, obviously it precedes me. I was like in high school when this planning process started, but for the past 10 years, it's really been something my company has been working on a lot from the very early stages of planning to now kind of still technically in the planning and design stages. But on Tuesday, we held our like big 25% design public information meeting where it was virtual, but it was like what do we have, like 150 people attend, lots of public comments, more overwhelming amount of public comments, but mostly positive and constructive. But so I would say, for the past month, I've been working on like putting together the PowerPoint, kind of bringing together, working closely with our engineering staff and traffic staff to like really understand how do we like communicate this project visually, and just like explain people the logic of how do we got to this design and why why it's designed the way it is from like a traffic operations standpoint, but also like supporting transit and bicyclists and pedestrians, and really like supporting, and I think most of all is like reconnecting a community that has been like basically destroyed by a highway running right through it. So, we're all trying to correct the planning mistakes of the 50s and 60s. And so, just an example of a project I'm working on and something that's been keeping me very busy the past few weeks. So it's definitely just been a lot of meetings, coordinating with our engineering staff, and a lot of time in PowerPoint. And I think, so your question about just like working with engineers, I think one thing that sets planners apart is, in my experience, is just like communication and being able to communicate ideas. I think engineers are really good at coming up with ideas and solutions, but don't always know how to like, I don't know, sell isn't the right word, but just communicate the idea is effectively, you can see some of the PowerPoints they put together. Yeah, so I think that's been like really good opportunity working with engineering staff. I think, yeah, in local and state government, you kind of work with well, I guess in local government, you definitely work with all sorts of different professions, which is really cool as well. But yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
So typical day today, let's see here. I would say although I did work on grant writing and projects in Amherst, like long-term planning projects, my main primary role was staffing the zoning board of appeals. So my day-to-day there was working with prospective applicants and developers and attorneys and hearing from the public about proposals and guiding both the zoning board of appeals and applicants, guiding them through the permitting process to make the best sort of proposal possible to go to the public hearing and go through that sort of permitting process. While I do some of that, which is fun, I do, even though I wanted a break from that, because that can be kind of intense, I really like being a planning director in the day-to-day now is some of that, and now having some staff I can meet with prospective developers and still tell them what everything they need to do, and I'm definitely gonna check. Make sure they do, and that, that we review that before it gets approved. But now I have staff that then can be the staff liaison to boards. And so it frees up my time to work on more long-term planning projects. And there's a lot going on in Montague. The population of Montague is about 8,500 people. The land area is huge. But for like a small, low-income rural community, we're busting at the seams with like planning projects, which I love. I can't say no to them. So there hasn't been affordable housing developed in the town of Montague in over 10 years. And just like everywhere else, there's a need for housing. And so we're working to identify locations in town that we have control over, so like town-owned properties, to see if we can redevelop them to provide sort of mixed-use neighborhood-scale neighborhoods that have housing as well as other uses. And so there is right now, right when I started, I think it was like month 2, we received a request for proposal from Habitat for Humanity, and they're going to be building 6 detached single-family homes on a 1-acre lot right in the heart of downtown, and it's in the EJ population, and it's walkable to bus stops and playgrounds and the main sort of commercial drag, and it's a really exciting project. And so for that, it's been an opportunity to think about housing beyond permitting. And I've gotten a chance to understand and experience like pre-development activities needed to even, you have land now. How do you is it permitted for housing? And like going through an RFP process, moving through that review process, and then guiding the town on making sort of purchase and sale agreements and with the developer. And so another housing-related project that I'm working on, and I call it my baby, because it started with me. So the town has this hospital. There was a hospital in town. It was privately owned for like 100 years. People were born there. People died there. There was a lot of in and out. It was this beloved place. People love hospitals. It means something. People work there. So before I started, it was decided that the hospital was going to close, and they wanted to give the property to the town, and they were going to demolish the hospital. There were structural issues, and that were just too costly to preserve and rehabilitate, and so it was demolished. that happened before my time. So when I started, I was like, oh, it's a blank slate. Now that this is a sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity for this part of town. It's about 8 acres and it's in the village center of Montague City. And so there's a real opportunity for this village center and neighborhood and the town as a whole to think about what would folks like to see there? What kind of land uses and activities? So we went through a visioning study last year. It was funded through the Mass Housing Partnership. And so we were able to hire a consultant and we did a lot of this visioning study was all about planning process and community engagement. And I gotta say, that is what I have been focusing on exclusively for the last 2 years rather. So like day in and day out, I constantly have to talk to whoever I have to talk to, is remind them is there a planning process? What is the agreed upon planning process? A community engagement plan. And that is what the service that I provide as a professional planner is to find out what is the vision of the community through a planning process and community engagement, and to help guide the decision makers of that process. So for this Farron property, this 8-acre property, the town came together last year. We had a lot of public forums and focus group meetings, and the vision is some level of housing, and it's along a bike trail, and we want to sort of make a better connection through this property to connect back over to the other side of the road, and so now we, with that, my new day-to-day is taking the findings and recommendations from last year's study and working on zoning amendments to help make redevelopment there possible. So looking at based on last year's visioning, what do people like? People said housing, retail, community spaces. Unfortunately, the zoning bylaw doesn't allow those uses. So in order to provide a permitting pathway for it, we have to go through rezoning. And so that's my new day-to-day of exploring possible zoning amendments that will get into uses, as well as dimensional regulations and design standards before we then move on to the next step, which is doing an RFP process. But those are just 2 snapshots of my day-to-day.
Thanks. I won't, a lot of what I do, it's a different flavor of what you're mentioning, and on the regional level, I don't get to work directly on some of those sort of like hyper-local things that you mentioned, but on a different side of things, I guess, in planning, right now, especially the last few months, we're planning for our next fiscal year, which can sound boring, but it's also an opportunity to look at what we've done and like where we want to go and start making sure we have money set aside to do those things. In my work, at least in my department, I do regional planning and municipal services, so some things that we're hoping to fund this next fiscal year are like shared services study, figuring out what positions in our towns maybe are hard to be filled and could be shared amongst the towns, because we have 15, but Connecticut has 169, and Massachusetts is home rule too. Having one example, a planner in every single town can be hard for people, but there's a lot of other positions that are hard to fill. So that's something I'm looking into and doing research on how to structure. Also like a sewer and water infrastructure study, because there's a lot of towns in Connecticut that depend on septic and well, and part of the town will have septic and well, and some will have sewer and water, or most of it will be septic and well. And like you mentioned, affordable housing is a big issue everywhere. So a lot of our towns can't build density on septic, or it's limited to how much density can be. So that's something we're looking into as a region for municipalities. So that's kind of a lot of what I've been focused on, but also, just supporting the programs we do have in place, We have grants assistance with consultants who help our towns who might not have the staff to write their own grants or to kind of review proposals. We have community conversations about housing in a lot of our communities. So we have a facilitator who will work at the grassroots level to help them build support for affordable housing so that when they go in front of a planning and zoning commission, they have a group of people who's speaking up kind of against the norm of nay, people that don't want housing, and a variety of things like that. Some of you might be familiar, the previous two studios at the MRP have worked on a climate action plan for my region. So yeah, I've been the client for the last two studios, which has been really fun. So we've received a EPA grant in 2023 to do climate action planning for 4 years, and we are in the middle of our second plan, so that's a big project I've been working on since I started. I think we received the grant about 4 months into me working here, and we have it until 2027, knock on wood. And so that's been a big part of what I've been doing ever since I started at the COG. And in all of these projects, it really depends on what we're working on. In the sense with the climate action planning, we're working with UMass, but we're also working with a consultant, so with a lot of climate scientists. But in some of my other work directly with the towns, we work with their public works department, we'll work with their grants staff, we'll work with directly with municipal officials, so mayors, first selectmen, town managers, but also directly with planners and other staff like that.
Awesome, thank you guys. Okay, so before we open up to audience questions, do you guys have maybe any final advice for students, or maybe what skills have you noticed to be important in your planning career, especially starting out?
I guess one thing that has, especially this year, I've come to realize is really important is having a good understanding of how the state government works wherever you're working. Right now, Connecticut's in its long session of the legislation, so there's a lot of bills that are being discussed, and a lot of them can impact both the regional council of governments, but also the towns, which then we try to support them in depending on how they're being affected. And that's not something that I really paid attention to before until I had to, and I wish I had a little bit of better understanding. It can be really important and have big effects on your work.
I think my biggest lesson would be think about, I really like teamwork and working collaboratively. And I think when I was starting out, I was there sort of proving myself, like, I can do all this, like, and didn't see the value, or I just wasn't conscious of it yet. And it's working with others, working collaboratively, having different various perspectives come together and find a common goal is really a part of planning, I think. And in a lot of these projects, I won't get into it, but there's this one particular one called the MVP 2.0. Has given me the opportunity to really collaborate with other department heads, residents that are part of our target populations and social nonprofits. And it's been really a great experience for me to use that process to get to know the community more and to build sort of coalition of like why, like I'm learning, oh, this is why I should care about this. I've heard whatever the scenario it is of like getting to hear people's concerns directly from their mouth goes a really long way. And then from hearing added information from either nonprofits or other departments that speak to even more about particular topics. It really helps guide my decision-making and help guide sort of what, are there planning programs or initiatives that we should be thinking about either creating or expanding to meet those needs that have been identified by our community members. It really brings value.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, when Stephanie and Maureen were answering the last question, it reminded me of just like almost the first question about like how the transition to the first job was. And one thing I think I wanted to, share just other thoughts were just like sometimes how slow things can move and just like getting used to that, and like, but also understand, like, appreciating the small victories. Like, I don't know, Maureen, it might be like 10 years until anything's built there realistically, like who knows, or maybe 5-10 years from something like that, but like getting through that for all those little hurdles are like so monumental. And I think that's a good example of a project that's like starting from the early stages and gonna eventually get built one day with like a lot of hard work and zoning amendments and this and that. And like what Stephanie with like different conversations around housing, like just building those coalitions and things are so important, even if it might not manifest into anything for a while. And so I think like, yeah, just like getting that perspective that like, you can get impatient sometimes quickly, but like just seeing the long view of like, this is all building towards something, just like the reality of like working on local government where like everything's cyclical, you have to get funding for this, the city council meeting meets, every so often, or like, you have to get on their agendas and they can't talk about it for this, just like things take a while, I guess. And, but then at the same time, also sometimes things are emergency, needs to happen immediately. So like, there's always that. So I just wanted to share that. I feel like that was like part of my learning curve as well, was just like understanding the pace of things, but also like appreciating like the little incremental steps along the way and trying to see the bigger picture. And I think in terms of like skills to share, I think, you can have all the technical skills and chops, but I think a lot of it is just like recognizing that people care a lot about their communities, and like you're just there to, I guess it's kind of cliche, but like serve the public interest, and you can offer guidance and give advice on like how these different things are connected and this and that, but and try to communicate ideas, but people care about their communities a lot and want to have a say in how it's shaped and how it's built, and just making sure that you're carrying out that vision to the best of your ability and letting people have control over that. And you might not agree with things, and you might be like, how, that doesn't, make sense. There's, the newbie folks in the room who are contrarian to progress and all of that, but like just understanding that they care about their community and that's how it's manifesting, but like understanding that there's, there's ways to build, just build momentum anyway, so.
Awesome, this has been super, super insightful. I want to open up to you guys if you have any questions. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but do you want to do the mic or?
I can just, so of course, all the classes that you took here were preparing you for the work that you'd be doing in the real world, but were there any things that you learned in particular that you were able to really kind of reach back into and more so directly apply it than some of the other things that you might have learned to what you're doing now?
I think I was reflecting on this the other day. I feel like the studio class I had is probably like the most complete planning process I've like ever done, like from start to finish. Like I feel like as a consultant or even public sector, you kind of like work on little bits and pieces of plans here and there. But like I feel like the studio class we had in we did like an economic development study for Boxborough, town of Boxborough. And just to have that whole like process start to finish and see the community engagement, the meetings with the town officials, the community engagement events, the putting together the plan, and then like delivering the final presentation. I feel like that was like such a nice, neatly wrapped planning process. I wish Camille was here, but I feel like, yeah, that kind of gave me this appreciation for like a really solid planning process, and it's something I think about a lot, as in like, you know, thinking about like where, or yeah, I guess I just reflect on that often and thinking about the different elements of that plan and how it all came together so nicely. And that too, I mean, we had like a cohort of like 20 folks that year. I think just like trying to wrangle a team together and all contribute and cooperate well is like really instructive as well. So yeah, like I said earlier, I think you can like have a lot of like, you can be really skilled in GIS, you can, you know, good graphics, good writing skills, communication skills, that's all great. But just being able to like, yeah, like be part of the planning process and collaborate with folks well and communicate ideas is like really, I think was a really valuable experience from LIRP.
Mine's very similar.
Yeah, I don't have, I would agree with the studio experience, just giving you a taste of what going through a full planning process, even though it's obviously very condensed. But I would just also add Professor Enfield's class, public engagement, public participation. It's just like the key to every part, no matter whether you're a consultant or you're working on a local or regional level, knowing how to, like keeping those principles in mind when you're engaging to know that you're like helping the community and giving them a voice to the process that affects them the most. It's probably like you use the other tools that you learn, GIS, things like that, but like engagement is so ingrained in planning, and it's like, yeah, that's just like the biggest takeaway I have, I guess.
Any other questions? Seth?
I really enjoyed hearing about the context and time that you guys mentioned when you were entering the workforce. And I apologize, and you don't have to answer this if you're not comfortable. I'm wondering what the climate is like at your respective workplaces with the shakeup in the federal politics right now, in funding structures, and how that would translate to any advice you have with people who will be entering the planning workforce here soon. Yeah.
I think I can answer the first question, maybe. Well, we don't want to lose hope. And so we're still applying for federal grants and hoping for the best. We don't want to just say, oh, well, we won't try. We have some very large Mass DOT projects lined up in the next couple of years, which is redoing, I think, 3 or 4 bridges. I think you might know, but it's like, this is like just monopoly money to me. It's like $60 million project, and we have to wait for that in order to then get sewer and water to this town parcel to then develop it. So now, when we thought this could be ready to go in like 2 or 3 years now, well, let's just hope it's 4. Yeah, so it is very scary, and I guess part of me is just, I'm so busy at work that that part of me is just trying to focus on that and just see where this goes. And one other thing is that, you know, I said this to the downtown business community of Turner's Falls. We're trying to find a structure to provide them more support to the businesses. We like have a business coordinator, and we have a pilot project, and we're able to hire a coordinator soon. Actually, the job posting is going to be $60,000 to $75,000 for 1 year, and then the question is who's paying for it after. But it would be a really great opportunity to any planners such as yourself. But you know, the businesses, we had a meeting I think on Monday, and one of the businesses was like, oh man, what happens if, you know, Montague is a poor community. We heavily rely on grants we don't have enough tax revenue to come in and provide the services and programs that community members deserve to have. And so if we lose this funding, places like Turner's Falls are going to be hardest hit, is those places that are already EJ populations that need more resources and opportunities. And so it's a really scary reality to start bracing ourselves for. And that is why I think it's really important that communities come together more than ever to face these these vulnerabilities, be it climate change or the Trump administration, is like to build resiliency and working together and finding ways that could either be mutual aid or collaborative ways of getting grants together. It is something that I'm beginning to really think about, of bracing ourselves for perhaps, worst case scenario financially.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's obviously been on all of our minds at work and stuff. And I think it's kind of, it feels premature to answer because I feel like there's been a lot of talk and memos and this and that, but it's unclear what is actually the effect it is going to be. We've been talking in the transportation world, and this comes back to communication, how do we frame things differently? We maybe can't necessarily talk about equity per se or bike lanes for some reason now, but we can frame things as choice of transportation or supporting families getting around, or just different ways of framing things that are maybe more acceptable, I guess. For example, we're working on these Safe Streets for All grants, which are federally funded, SS4A program, and we recently had to go through our equity section that we had on there, which was required, but now is frowned upon, I guess, as part of the grant. So we had to go through there and kind of rework it to where we can talk about areas of persistent poverty, which is part of the federal definition, and that's that really gets at the same point. We can talk about areas where there's lack of sidewalk infrastructure, which kind of coincides with areas of high minority, lower income areas. So there's ways to kind of we found to kind of reframe things and still get a similar result. But that being said, I feel it's definitely concerning, what we're hearing from the federal administration, and it's just unclear what the effect will be at this point. But I think another thing too, it was one of the House Democrats said something about the more we can focus on traffic safety, that's something that is pretty universally accepted. I think people dying, getting injured on roadways is something we all want to prevent, and to the extent that also supports building out pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure and safer streets, that's a way to achieve a similar goal. So we're trying to just frame things differently as we move forward. But yeah, I think a lot remains to be seen, what it'll look like, I guess. I think slowly there's going to start to be, the infrastructure bill was obviously bipartisan, and they're starting, there's been rumors that some of the RFPs and notice of funding opportunities will start coming out soon, so it'll just be interesting to see what the criteria look like for those, and how we can kind of message the grant opportunities. But yeah, in terms of advice, I would just kind of echo what Maureen said, so much planning does happen at the local level, and I think now more so than ever, communities do need to become more self-reliant, and just have robust kind of local support for projects. And I think we're also blessed to live in a very progressive state, Massachusetts. The more I've gotten out, work in other states, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, a little bit, everyone talks about just envying Massachusetts state, departments, and just the different funding initiatives and the way they're supporting kind of like all these great initiatives, whether it's housing or transportation as well. So I'm hopeful in that sense.
Okay, I think you have time for one more
Sorry,
quick
yeah.
question.
Okay. So my question is that since all of you were dual degrees, like you had another major with regional planning, how do you think that played a role in your professional career and or your work ethics, work proficiency?
Well, I definitely think they complement each other. I'm not a designer, but going through the MLA program made me a stronger planner to understand the value and understand the planning process. And then, being the planner, it was helpful going through design studio to understand design design and spatial analysis and I am a very visual person and to be able to sort of communicate those two worlds. I would say that as an example, I would say that I'm a disability and accessibility advocate, and those are my values. And what's a luxury about being a planner is that I personally I get to my personal values complement my professional work, and to do that day in and day out is a really humbling and honorable way of life. And so to bring it back to disability and accessibility advocacy is that not all people are, and there's a lot of relearning out there, maybe among developers or I can't name names, but it's just it wasn't really in the consciousness of people of like, oh yeah, do we really need that ramp? That's going to cost like this much money, like or whatever the scenario is. And so working with disability committees, hearing their outcry. Why are people over a year, lifetime, years and years, decades, I think the people that I can't get into like the pizza shop. Grandma can't have dinner with the family at the pizza shop because there's stairs and it's not ramps. And it's like, well, how do we fix that? And then I see a lot of people that say, no, we can't do that. But it's like, well, it's design standards. We have ADA standards at the federal level, as well as the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. And so A is the law. A is good design. The designers in the room of promoting universal design. Don't we want that? And so, between the law and the planning process, as planners, we're trying to make, sustainable, equitable communities, and to bridge this sort of like, that is perfectly, it's design, and it's also planning, and it's also creating this equitable community. And so, it's awesome to sort of blend both of them, and then I have the support of my staff. I would say, is that we, as the town of Montague, those are our values. And you will see that through planning, through updating regulations, and through design and of public land, like our parks and our sidewalks. We want to make them ADA accessible. Because why? Because we want everyone to feel included. They belong in our community. And so anyways, that's my example.
That is all we have time for today. Sorry, but thank you so much. We appreciate all your answers. Thank you all guys for coming today as well.